Hello everyone, we are now live. So there are a few people here already, so if you guys can just confirm that my audio is indeed working as it should, that would be fantastic. So today I'm going to be sculpting Shrek. This is going to be a fun little sculpt I've been doing working on for some time, and he's been pretty neglected, so finally I'm spending some time on him again just to make sure that he is given the attention he deserves, at least what I think he deserves. So I'm going to be sculpting high frequency details today. We also have I'm also doing rendering as well. I might go a little bit back and forth here. This is the current version of the render, which is also what I used for the thumbnail for this one. So it's currently rendering. I should have stopped that actually. But yeah, this is using the GPU rendering, and in Arnold, in Maya. Question, are you guys really live? Yeah, I'm pretty live. Not really you guys though, Morten isn't here, but I am very much live. So I'm going to be, just showing you how to take this up. I might go up and just overall just improve this one. There's a layer here on top that has like really fine noise as well. I might balance that at some point. Like you can see, it's a bit too high here and there, but in general, I'm just going to be sculpting. This is one of those things I think is just so important when it comes to making characters. Just embrace the grind. Just embrace the fact that some of these things, they're just going to take some time. So that's really what I'll do today. It's not really going to be too much fancy stuff. If you want to see like construction of a sculpt, then you can check out the last video I did, which was yesterday, about 24 hours ago. You can see where I was sculpting. I can actually show you. I have him here. I was kind of debating what I should be doing today. And just to spice it up, I want to do something different. So this one is what I was doing yesterday. So I was sculpting this guy from scratch. So if you guys want to see that, that's all in yesterday's sculpt. That was about a 2-hour one. So yeah, let's just get cracking with this one. Just going over this one. Just going over damp standard, trying to just refine it, trying to make it look nice. Can you sculpt the eye part? What specifically would you like to see about the eyes? Because the construction is already kind of done. Well, kind of, it's very much done. So if you have any specific requests, let me know and I'll see what I can do in terms of explaining things as well. Also, as a little heads up as well, we have a very nice summer sale at the moment. So if you're interested in really nice tutorials, sculpting tutorials, all that kind of stuff, check out flipnovels.com. There's a link to that in the comment, not in the comment, in the bio in the description for this stream. We'll talk a bit more about that later on. So what I'm doing now is I'm essentially just going over and refining everything. It's not just high frequency, I'm also doing essentially mid frequency as well, because mid and high, they're so connected. You can't really just do high or just do low or just do mid. Like you really just have to think about the character's shape, and the closer up you get, the smaller the shapes get, but it's really important that you're considering the whole thing as one holistic shape. One thing I'm thinking about as well is I'll keep going back and forth between this render now, because it's really important to see to get live feedback from what you're doing. So instead of just sculpting and then putting this in texturing and then putting this in rendering, I think it's really important to be a bit more holistic about these things. So I do these renders throughout the whole process, from very, very early on to very late. And I keep doing sculpting changes as well. For me, sculpting is one of those absolute core things when it comes to improving the sculpt. Like here is an example of that. If you notice hopefully you can see this, right? There's some compression over the stream. But if you look at the nose here, between these two, if you go between this and that, you can see how much more refined the nose is, a bit more refined this is. This is all sculpt, and this is just an updated vector displacement map I have on top. So the number one thing I can do to improve this character at the moment is going to be improving the sculpt. I also want to refine the shading a bit, refine the lighting, all that kind of stuff. A bit more on the groom, because there is a little bit of, you see the peach fuzz here? It's starting to work all right, but it's still needs a bit more love. Can you please show you what you did with XGen this project? Yeah, mostly I cried. Mostly I cried a lot, because XGen is the worst thing ever invented by humankind. It's really, 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 really annoying to work with. It's okay if it behaves. The problem is that the moment something goes wrong with it, then it just kind of gets destroyed. So here, for instance, we have the peach fuzz, right? You can see those on top. And this is something I had to rebuild like 3 times now, just because there was something wrong with something somewhere. And honestly, I couldn't really figure that out. It's not very difficult to use in theory, but in practice, when it comes to something screwing up, and it's difficult. But let me show you. So I have a few different collections here. I have the ear collection, because of course, you know, my guy needs some air here, so we have that. I have the same thing for the nose, because my guy also needs some hair for his little nose. And then I have eyebrows that are all done. All this is just XGen, right? And then I have the eyelashes. The eyelashes are actually not XGen. This is all done by hand, or like this is an existing eyelashes pack. Eyelashes are really important. And we have the same thing on the other side. This model here is not symmetrical, like in any way. So I sculpted the whole thing without symmetry. This makes him look a bit more wonky, a bit more unique. But it also means that I have to do everything by hand, which, you know, it's okay, but it takes longer. I'm considering maybe turning this guy here into a masterclass and like the whole thing. I'm not sure if I'm going to do this one or the phone I was using a few days ago, but yeah, one of them I'll probably do. But yeah, that's kind of it for the XGen setup. It's fairly straightforward in terms of the XGen. I'm just using the default core XGen for this. Nothing too fancy, you know, not a lot of modifiers with this kind of stuff, mostly like noise and clumps. So we do actually have a tutorial on both the marketplace or introduction, or just on YouTube for free, where I'm covering that. Obviously the paid one is much more in depth. But yeah, XGen is both awesome and beyond terrible. It's such a frustrating tool to use. It just feels like it's not done. Like, I don't know, it's not really gonna get done. It's not gonna get it fixed, because it's been like this for like 10 years or more than that. So in theory, it's a good tool, and you can get really stunning results with it. Like you can get very, very nice results with it if you're patient. All that, you can make it work. But the moment something screws up, there, like it can be so many different things. It can just be like there isn't a version of Maya and something isn't compatible with it. It's so frustrating to work with. I also had this with this scene I was working with. Like, I haven't touched this in about, like, I don't know, 8 months or something. Like I was working on it, but then it was so slow to render, because I was using just an older computer or older computer parts, and I just got a new GPU like a week and a half ago now, so I can actually do proper fast GPU rendering. And in that time, in those 8 months, something has just screwed up. So the scene was totally fine when I left it last time, and with like the peach fuzz. I mean, it didn't look good, but that was an art thing. But now it's just technically broken, so I just had to redo it, and that's just really, really annoying. So then you have the options between like doing this in Houdini, but then you have to, you know, pay for Houdini, which is another big expense. I need to pay for Arnold there. That's around $650 a year. Houdini, like Houdini Indie plus Arnold. Don't want to do that. And XGen is kind of okay if you are just willing to do spend time on it. How do you add the pore details? That's a really good question. Let me actually show you this. I'll show you how I did this. So I can actually show this on different character. I'm just gonna have to show you some more stuff first, because there's a bit of a setup for this. So the pores are all done directly in ZBrush. Like, there was no texturing here, like external texturing for this. This is all, of course, in the final render, right? This is painted. The texture map here, where are we? The texture map here is painted in Mari, but it's honestly quite a simple map, and the majority here is just all ZBrush. So there's that, but it's really just ZBrush. It's really just ZBrush, like sculpting stuff in ZBrush. But here, let me show you. So here's a product. I'll send a link to this in the chat. So this is the Flipnomal's face kit. This is a really, really high quality kit for doing faces, for doing specific detailing for the faces. So this is what we use for all this kind of stuff, really making sure this looks super nice. And this is what I'm doing for this. Let me actually show you how I did this for another character here. You can see a little bit of this in the stream yesterday, but this would be the gist of it. So here, what we have is we have the standard brush. And then I'm going to load in the alphas for the face kit. So we can just load in something like this one here. This one is really good. We can double click it and then load it. There we go. And then just enable symmetry, because here I was smart and this is all done symmetrically. So all good with that. And then we just change the stroke type here, and then we just go. Well, we need more polycounts, right? This is a bit lower now, but if you find an area that's a bit higher polycount, well, maybe we can just make it a bit bigger. Like here, you can see that this is how we do it. So just really going in and just adding these kind of pores. This the face kit has two stages. It has two parts. It has the old kit and it has the young kit. The young one is a bit cleaner, just because that's how young faces are. The old one contains more noise, but that's also intentional because more noise means that there's more breakup. But this is how I'm doing it. You see here, just dragging out these alphas. So just do this for a long time, and then you're gonna end up with a really nice result. Hey, did you paint the textures in ZBrush as well? No, this was, like I mentioned, this was done in Mari. But if I were to do a masterclass for this one, which I might do, I'll probably paint them in Painter. Because, you know, Mari is a little overkill for this kind of stuff. Mari is good, but Painter is just a bit more intuitive to use. Would you happen to know a great resource for alphas? What do you want to know about alphas? Because alphas is a giant one. It would be like how to learn how to make alphas, or which alphas to buy or which to get and all that. So yeah, let me know and I'll see how I can help with that. No face cam? No face cam today. Today is just voice cam. So just going over the whole thing, like it really makes a big difference when you do spend proper time sculpting up this. Like it genuinely makes a huge, huge difference. This is also only like 18 million polys, which isn't even that much for a character like this. This is where I would have ideally liked to subdivide it once more, but then we're in the 100 million poly mark, at least 80 million, almost 80 mil, and that's just really annoying to work with. And if it kind of holds up at this distance here in ZBrush, then it's going to hold up. And like I wouldn't get closer to this in a render, so then it's going to hold up. But if I were to go this close, I need more resolution. But yeah, if you're dealing with like the 60+ million, like ZBrush can work with it fine in terms of pure sculpting, but dealing with layers, dealing with any kind of like saving, loading, auto-saving, that kind of stuff becomes just very, very annoying to deal with. Yeah, the question was, how do you make alphas from 2D images? And if you know websites with pre-made alphas or brushes. This is where it might be handy, like with the face kit I was talking about here. This is legit a really good kit, so I do really recommend this one. Like I use this all the time. But then we also have, let's see, this should be here as well. This is the skin kit. This is I'll just send a link to this one. This is also a really nice kit. This is one I made myself. This one I didn't make. We hired somebody to make this one. But this one I made myself. So this is really solid for just making, well, high quality characters. And this is more generic, meaning it's not just for pores and skin. This is also for characters and such. So it's just a really nice kit. How to make them from images, that's a little bit more tricky because it's something which is a bit beyond the scope of this stream, because it just takes time to do. There are a lot of little gotchas with that. The way I'm doing that is you can do something like Crazy Bump, like I straight up just throw them into Crazy Bump and that can work. But I always find that I need to spend more time on it in ZBrush afterwards. Basically, I convert it to a displacement map in Crazy Bump or in Photoshop. I have some techniques in Photoshop I use for that, and then I load it in the ZBrush and on a plane, and then I sculpt it up. That's how all the ones in the skin kit was made. So really just spending time on that. It takes a long time. You basically have to re-sculpt the whole thing, but at least large parts of it, but it really turns into something that's really nice as well. I personally recommend just like buying a kit, right? It's just so much faster to do. Like it took me several months to make the skin kit, and of course that also involved R&D figuring out how to do it. But my God, it's just very, very time consuming. But of course, up to you what you want to do with that. Like just making one alpha, if you don't know how to do it, might take you several hours, because it's not just like making a kind of a crappy alpha. It's pretty easy, right? And pretty not very time consuming. But making really high quality alphas, it just takes a very, very, very long time. Like I've made a lot of alphas, right? And yeah, it's really tricky. One thing we did with the skin kit and the face kit alphas is they have a mid value of 50, which means that they can go in and out as well, which is quite unique for alphas. Mostly they have a mid value of like black, of like 0, which means that they can only go out, which means you're just missing a significant amount of data in it. is almost like using a 16-bit versus 32-bit displacement map. Like you really, really just want that additional data in it. Yeah, so I'm just going through here and just really making sure that this stuff here is nice and sharp. Just the damn standard brush now. Just going over this and adding sharpness to this stuff. Just going through this. What you can also do, you can set the damn standard to drag rect, and then you can just do this. And then you just get pores. But these pores here I've already done a pass with the face kit. So when it comes to this, it's a lot easier because there's already a bit of a shape to it. Well, yeah, let me know what questions you guys have about anything. Like the stream is not just about hard surface. I'll mostly stick to hard surface, but whatever questions you guys have, very happy to answer that. This just takes time. I keep talking about this in the streams and to my mentees as well, in my mentorship, that if you can just embrace manual work, like actually embracing that this just takes time, you're going to be in a so much better spot here than your competition, because so many people are trying to find quick solutions to this. And if you can just go, well, I don't really care about quick solution, I care about something looking good in the end. It's the whole thing, right? Like with a video game, a rushed game is a bad game forever, but a delayed game is eventually a good game. It's a bit like this as well. If it takes time to build a portfolio piece, that's fine. You just need, but once it's done, right, it's going to be a good portfolio piece. But a rushed one is always going to be a bad one. I'm not really building this as a portfolio piece, I'm just building this for fun. Well, it is kind of a portfolio piece, I suppose, but I'm not really looking for jobs, so I'm just building this to, you know, keep up to date on my skills, keep up to date on software, and just because I think it's kind of fun to sculpt characters like this. I'm just really enjoying it. It's just really fun to make silly, goofy characters like this. It's really easy to forget that it just takes time to build something that looks really good. It's almost like I mentioned this in previous magic tricks, in previous streams. Like with magic tricks, one of the ways you kind of do good magic is by just spending on, like, you know, actual magic trick, not like Harry Potter magic, is to spend more time than anyone would reasonably assume they would spend on something. It's a bit like that with this as well. Same if you look at all the amazing statues you find in Rome and Italy. Like they spend years on those things. It would be like, if I spent years on those things, it would probably also look quite good. Oh, this is a really, really good question, but it's a way too advanced one for this one, too elaborate. Can you show the process of adding low, mid, and high frequency details and how to make a model look like a specific material such as bone and wood? Like that, I would love to answer that, but that's a 2-hour masterclass right there. That's just unfortunately a bit too wide with this. When you want to make something look like bone or wood, it's not like I just intuitively know how to make something look like bone and wood. But if I had to, I would be able to. But the reason I would be able to is not because I just have some magical sculpting abilities. It would be like, well, you look at reference and you start to analyze it, right? You start to see where are the sharp edges on the wood, or how many soft, sharp edges are there, and you just start to analyze it from a sculptural point of view. You don't just cowboy in and just start to sculpt right away. No, figure out kind of the shape language of what it is you're trying to sculpt and then go from there. Same with skin as well. You need to understand the material that is skin, and instead of just like shooting from the hip. I think it's so important to understand that. Hey, what do you think about AI and its impact on modeling? Well, currently there is none. Like, there is no actual impact on modeling at the moment. We don't know what's going to happen with AI in general. But there aren't really tools for doing AI modeling at the moment, right? Like, there are some prototypes here that some companies like Meta and such are pushing, but they're not very good at the moment. So, I mean, let's see what happens with that. It's really, really hard to say what's going to happen, particularly because, you know, who knew like if you're in early 2000 or 2022 and if you ask somebody, hey, do you think in a year we're gonna have AIs that can produce close to photorealistic images? It would be like, no. And then Midjourney comes out and it's like, yes. So it's really hard to predict anything with that. Any plans to do more podcast episodes? I would absolutely love to. It depends a bit just on our schedule, but yeah, I would really, really love to. We have actually one planned we kind of almost have a script for it not even a script, don't really do scripts. We have like notes for one on education. Kind of basically, we have a lot of these ones, right? But like every time I go to a school, I talk to students, I kind of get more radicalized against unis to some degree. So it's basically like the whole, is uni worth it to you? Which is I think it's an evergreen topic and things change. So I think it's a really good one to keep talking about. So yeah, we definitely want to do that. We want to just do more like CG news kind of stuff. I would like to do more of the art challenges where we're doing like Morten and I are sculpting a horse and sculpting a giraffe and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would love to do more of those. If one wish to sculpt a 50-year-old hobbit, is the old skin or new skin kit pack? Basically, I guess you're asking if you want to use the skin kit or the face kit, because the face kit contains both the young and the old, so you get both there. I guess it would be like 50-year-old hobbit. Well, Frodo is 50, right? So he looks pretty young. So then you would use the young one. It would be more like I use both. For this one here, I use, like, this is obviously an older dude, right? But middle-aged guy who was born in 1963. So for this, I use both. I use the old one for general skin undulation. You can see this actually a bit in yesterday's stream, how I did that, like exactly how I went about that. And then I'm using the young one for the very specific pores on top. So yeah, use both for it. The face kit is much better for faces than the skin kit. The skin kit is a Swiss Army knife of alphas, and it's really, really useful for all sorts of stuff. I do use it a bit for the general skin here as well, like some pimples and pores and such. But in general, the face kit is phenomenal for specifically for faces, while the skin kit is a very good generic skin kit. What are your PC specs, GPU and RAM? Not fantastic. My RAM, I have 16 gigs of RAM. The reason is that I have a mini PC, and this was bought back in, well, I had a mini PC. This was bought back in 2019. And at that time, mini PCs, at least the ones I bought, the motherboard didn't support more than 60 gigs of RAM. So I still have that, but I just bought a new tower like 2 weeks ago, and just because I got a new GPU and I physically couldn't fit the the GPU in it. It was way too large. So the new GPU is a 4080 Super. So that's a beefy guy. What is that, like 16? Yeah, 16 gigs of RAM on that one, of VRAM on the GPU. So that is phenomenal. So that's what I'm using to render this as well. So this here is all GPU. So just going through here and going through and just adding more of these ones here. I think it's really important just to cover the whole thing. It's not just about adding pores though, it's also just about just proper sculpting. Just going in and just adding the shapes where you want to be. Here's a good one. I'm working on a project, but it's slow and I'm getting bored. I really want to finish it perfectly. Could you suggest me any ways to stay motivated and improve my progress? I think the first thing is just to kind of stop with the notion that it's going to be done perfectly, because there's no such thing. It can't be done perfectly. It can be done to the best of your abilities and within a certain time frame, but perfect it's just impossible, right? Because that doesn't really exist. So I would say that it would be like kind of like, well, you want to do a good job at it, but in terms of like staying motivated at it, I think sometimes it's a good idea to take a little break from it. But if that's not an option and you really want to just continue, you can start to time box it. Time boxing simply means that you're spending a certain amount of time on each section of it. So that's kind of what I'm doing with this character here, to be honest, because this is pretty intimidating. So when we're like, it's intimidating because, man, there are a lot of things to sculpt here, right? So just something to keep in mind with time boxing. It means that you're spending a certain amount of time on each section. So you might be spending like 10 minutes on the nose, 10 minutes on the eyes, 20 minutes on the ears, all that kind of stuff. And if it's a bigger character, it could be 10 minutes on the costume or an hour on the costume, and you just kind of block it out. I have an Apple Watch, and I use a Pomodoro timer on that sometimes if I'm doing something that's really boring, which just means that I have a 20-minute timer, and after 20 minutes, my hand just vibrates. My watch just goes, hello, time to stop, and then I just move on to something else. Because sometimes you just have to power through it. If it's boring, it doesn't matter, right? It also depends why you're doing something. It's like a little bit like if you're reading a crappy book. You don't have to finish the books. You don't have to finish a movie if you don't enjoy it, right? If the project is something that genuinely brings you no joy and it's not for portfolio purposes, then you can also just quit that. If it is something though that is for portfolio purposes, then I think it's a very good idea to power through. Essentially, if it's a portfolio, you should treat that as a job. To-do lists are your best friend in this instance. Yeah, to-do lists are fantastic. I've kept on, like, throughout all my years, having like trying to find the perfect to-do list. I never find it, right? Because the issue isn't with a to-do list, the issue is for me. So what I tend to do is I find like a really good app, like something like Todoist is awesome, and I set up all my tasks, I set up all filters, all that kind of stuff. And then it comes to doing the to-do items, and I don't want to because I enjoy building systems. I don't enjoy doing stuff. So what I started doing recently, though, which is like the last few months that's actually worked for me, is back to pen and paper. Honestly, just I have a notebook here, and every day I write down what I'm supposed to do, and then I just scribble them off, just cross them out when they're done. And that's worked really well for me because it means that I just have everything in one spot, and it's obviously not as effective as doing this with something like an automated system and such, or like a full computerized system. But it's just about finding a system that works for you. It's not about finding, so what I was mentioning before, it's not about finding the perfect, it's not about finding perfection, right? Because that does not exist. It's all about doing something that works for you. Same thing with like a gym workout, right? Or gym routine. It's not about perfection. It's about finding something that is sustainable long term. The same thing with how do you stay motivated for projects. It's genuinely not about finding the perfect optimal system. It's really about what works for you. For some people, that is waking up at crack of dawn, like 5 a.m. and doing it. I know some people who's been doing that before work. They're waking up at like 5:30, then they're getting like an hour of work done before they have to get to work, and they're super productive that way. For me, I hate waking up at that point. So I wake up at those hours if I have to travel and catch an early flight or something, but I do not want to do that. I would much rather stay up an hour later or 2 hours later working on stuff there. So for some people, the ultimate system there is horrible for me. And same way like my system, right? Which is stay up super late until I hear the birds tweet in the morning, and I know I'm in trouble because now the sun is rising and I'm up way too late. But that's kind of something I think is kind of nice as well. But really, it's just down to what works for you. What's the best way to develop soft skills, understanding things like shape, color, aesthetics? That's a really hard one. I would argue that those skills aren't actually soft skills, that they're hard skills. It's more like those are fundamental skills instead of like the more technical skills than like CG. Soft skills for me is stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the the craft itself directly. Soft skills would be like, how are you as a person? Like how patient are you, or how do you address people? How do you make sure you can voice your opinion without like overstepping, all those kind of things. While what you're asking now is really like fundamentals, right? Fundamentals for me are timeless topics. So if you were to teach somebody how light works, how color works, and how anatomy works in the year 1200s versus the year 2024, you would kind of have the same answer, right? Like the subject matter hasn't changed, anatomy hasn't changed in 1,000 years. So, but ZBrush has, right? So if you were to try to teach something like an interface, I mean, a tutorial from 2002 for ZBrush is completely worthless today, even though it was the best one back then. So how do you learn the fundamentals like shape, color, aesthetic? Man, you just got to do a lot of it. Aesthetic is one of those, that's such a difficult one, because that's basically taste to some degree, and you just got to do it a lot. When it comes to stuff like that, you just need to do it a lot. Like there's just no substitute for that. I really don't think you can take a class on that. You can take a class on color and shape, whatever, but you really just got to do a lot of work, because it's not about intellectually knowing it. It's about almost like intuitively understanding it. Will there be any more Flip Normals podcast episodes? I'm looking for a good VFX industry related podcast. I mean, yeah, like it's probably going to happen. We don't have concrete plans at the moment for it, but yeah, let's assume it's going to happen, because they are good fun. And I think with all the stuff that's happening in VFX now, I think there might be a need for that. Here's a really good question about Famous Rat. How long do you think beginners should spend on a given project? Is it better to try to bring a specific thing into a good state, or make smaller projects frequently? This is kind of relating to the way I'm teaching my mentorships, where this is basically based on like a maybe true story, but it doesn't really matter, because the point of it still works. There are two classes. One class, they were both doing pottery. One pottery class is focused on making, like, it's a 2-month class. One is focused on making really, really beautiful pottery at the end, something you can really show to your parents, right? And just one nice piece. And the other one is just about learning as much as you can. At the end of the class, you smash your pottery into 1,000 pieces. At the end of those 2 months, the class that's just smashed the pottery is improving significantly more. And the reason for this is that if you don't really get attached to the work you're doing, and you see and you try to extract as much learning as you can from each project, there are so many small little things that's required in order to get good at it. It's not just down to making one beautiful piece. It's down to just getting into your hands, getting into like just working on a lot of different things. It's a lot more than just intellectually knowing how something works. So in this case, spending a lot of time, when you are a beginner, spending a lot of time on something, I don't find to be particularly useful. I think it's much, much better to do a lot of smaller projects, because for every single thing you do, you're going to learn so many things. I do definitely think that there is a time and place for longer projects. Like one piece of advice I've given before is for a portfolio piece, go absolutely mental and go overkill. I think that is very, very, very useful. But for learning, I think it's, if you can do like if you have a week to do a project versus doing 7 projects in a week, basically 1 day per project, like mini project, I think that's really, really, really the way to go. Because let's say you were to be spending a week on a project, by the time it's done, they're going to be improving so fast, right? By the time it's done, the project is already out of date, because the stuff you did in the beginning is way, way, way too old. So just doing tons of small little things all the time, I think is really useful. Also because you get exposure to a lot of different things. So an idea, for instance, if you're a beginner 3D artist, is to just recreate your working desk. Just make stuff that you see on your desk, right? Currently, I have a little notebook, I have a watch, I have like another watch, and I have another watch, and I have sunglasses, and I have a cap, right? Like, so all these kind of things is really useful to build. Some of those things are quite difficult, like watch number 2 is quite difficult, and the cap is quite simple. So doing things like that can be quite, it's a really interesting challenge, because it means you do get to explore a lot of different things, instead of just taking one thing up to a really high level. So as a beginner, in short, I really recommend doing a lot of projects. And the way I deal with tutorials as well as a beginner is first, buy all of the normal ones, obviously a good idea. But apart from that, it's don't just watch a tutorial in the beginning and then go through it. Let's say you want to learn Maya or Blender or ZBrush. Don't just sit down and watch Intro to Blender, Intro to Maya by, we have tons of those tutorials. What I think is a better idea is to maybe watch like the first chapter just so you kind of understand the overall philosophy of the software, because you don't have to go in blind, but just to understand navigation, general philosophy, etc. But then start building right away. And then you are going to get stuck almost right away, right? Because that's just how it is, because you don't know anything about the software. And then you go around and you Google the crap out of things right away. If you get stuck on, well, how do you extrude something in Blender? You search for how do you extrude, or you can watch the chapter on extrusion. Then you try to assign a material and you're like, oh crap, how do I do this? Watch a video on how to do that. The reason I recommend doing that is because you get to progressively improve your knowledge of 3D. Like you get to like really add things up piece by piece, instead of just, it would be like if you're trying to learn a language and you just start opening a dictionary and you like start memorizing all the words. I don't think that's particularly handy. It's almost like you're learning things based on when you need it. That's how I'm doing it with DaVinci, for instance. Like I'm working with DaVinci Resolve at the moment because it's just a much better editor than Premiere Pro. But I didn't really watch a course on DaVinci. Instead, I'm just like, all right, let's just edit the video. Let's see how we get from here. And then right away, I run into issues because I don't really know how the software works. And then I watch tutorials on how the software works. I do think it's a good idea to, at some point, watch the full intro series, just because there's tons of smaller things you haven't really caught up with or you haven't picked up. But I think it's a very good idea to just start with something. How do you learn 3D? Just build a lot of different things. That's really like the number one tip I have for you. Don't think I understand the last question. What's your point of Blender shading editor? Just shading editor, no UVs, painting, just nodes. Are they great? Yeah, if you could reformulate that would be really handy, because I don't really understand your question. Sorry about that. Yeah, for the whole like sculpting things around, like I think it's a good idea to do like box model that, poly model that, like just the props, right? If you're dealing with like a book or something, you probably don't want to sculpt that. You probably just want to poly model that. But for sculpting things, it would be like trying to find some cool ref and just sculpting that, trying to do some anatomy studies and sculpting that, and just gradually increasing your level. I really think that's the way to do it. But yes, some people also, that's how I work at least. Some people also need just to have a more direct way of learning, meaning they need to almost be in classes. Some people need, not just almost, some people need straight up classes, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is how some people work, that their brains just require somebody to basically tell them how to do something. And then like, in-person classes like university, or like just watching all the tutorials is really helpful. But try to build stuff as quickly as you can. Not even, no rushing ahead, building as quickly as you can in terms of like working fast, but try to get to a point where you build things right away. Really beneficial. Because otherwise you're just going to get stuck in tutorial hell where you can't really do anything. Is Maya's shading good in comparison is Blender's shading good in comparison to Maya's shading? Honestly, very comparable. About 10-ish years or so now, Disney came out with a paper on the principal material, and basically PBR, and that changed basically all render engines. So over the next 4 or 5 years, then at that point, all render engines basically adopted that. So the principal material in Blender is very comparable to the principal material in Arnold. There are some differences here and there. I think the Arnold one has a few more options here and there. I do prefer for skin shading, but honestly, it's very similar. It's not like the I was going to say the good old days, but the crappy old days where the shading was just an absolute nightmare. Each each different software had their own different materials, and each render engine was different. Nothing was in linear space. It was just all over the place. Gamma or color was not at all standardized. It was an absolute mess. So honestly, shading is fairly similar in all software today, which is awesome. It's one of the biggest gains in 3D over the last 10 years. It's one of those boring things, standardization of shaders, but it really means that 3D has got a lot easier. It means you don't really have to balance materials anymore to the same way you used to before. It responds fairly correctly to lighting, so you can speed that up because you can spend more time on the artistic parts, way less on the technical parts, and yeah, just making your shading nicer is much easier. Like if you want to make something metal now, you just take the metal slider and you say, yeah, that's metal. You just drag it from 0 to 1 and that's it. If you want to add subsurface, you don't, like if you want to use skin shading today, you don't need a dedicated skin shader because it's all just in this, in the principal material. So everything is so much easier today. So yeah, thanks Disney. The Disney has really done a lot of interesting things for CG. Apart from XGen, I'm still mad about that. XGen was developed by Disney, and that is, like, you maybe if you've been from the beginning of the video now, terrible. But I guess it's Autodesk's fault that they haven't really developed that since they bought it from XGen or from Disney. So you can see how I'm just doing manual labor, just going over the whole thing. What polygonal density do you recommend for starting a sculpt? Yeah, that depends so much on like what you're sculpting and your style of sculpting as well. Like there really isn't an answer to that because it just, I hate using the answer, well, it depends, but it truly depends on what you're sculpting. For instance, this guy here that I sculpted yesterday, he's already at 9 million, right? And he's still quite rough, to be honest. So in this case, 9 million is kind of what I need. But then after retopo and such, I would be able to optimize that a lot more. But yeah, the way, make sure that your computer can run the poly count and it's not too crazy, and then just kind of go for it. Just take it to the highest level you think is reasonable. Like don't go unreasonably low poly just because. Really try to have a mix between what your system can run and what you can actually sculpt with as well. And just a reminder that we have a very nice summer sale ongoing at the moment. So make sure to check out our creator flip models. This is all the stuff that we have on sale. So this is all these products here, 40% off. So here we have a lot of really high quality tutorials and resources that just cover a lot of different things. So check out the link and see if there's anything here you're interested in learning. Like for instance, Mari came up with that one recently. Face VDMs, really cool stuff. Full on masterclass on how to make a full character from scratch, where you just learn how to make this whole thing from scratch, all real time. No silliness with this, nothing sped up, no music, just proper learning. So yeah, check out the Flip Models store and yeah, see if there's anything interested in learning there. Is rigging crap in Blender? I'm not a rigger, I don't actually know. So if anyone is a rigger in Blender, let me know, because yeah, it's one of those I've heard mixed opinions about it, but I'm not a rigger, so cannot comment on that. I sculpt kaijus and other creatures. Sometimes I have issues with getting the correct shape unless I subdivide a lot. Yeah, you need like, if not subdivisions, you need the you need just enough, like either of resolution in Sculptors Pro or in Dynamesh. I wouldn't worry about too high of a polycount unless it's an issue for your system. If you can't get the shapes with the polycount you have, you just need more resolution. For sculpting this, I'm also, for displacements here, I'm also using vector displacement maps. I didn't know I wanted to sculpt the Shrek so much. Man, once the Shrek hits you, you just gotta... I'm spending way too much time on this. I mean, really, it's just a joke sculpt, and I'm spending way too much time on this one. But, you know, now I'm in it, so I have to complete it now. Vector displacement maps for rendering is quite nice because it's just more accurate. We actually have an article on this. I can actually send a link to this as well on how to set up this up, because it's quite handy. I'm not gonna show you how to do this now because I already written a pretty detailed tutorial on this here. So I'll just send a guide to this one here. So this is exactly the setup I'm using for this character here. It just means that it just gives you slightly better shapes than what you would get with the regular displacement map. And then I just kind of tend to export this out once in a while, and then I just see how it updates, how the updated sculpt looks. Because oftentimes you can't really see exactly what's going on either. Like like always, whenever you're sculpting anything in ZBrush, you can never see what it looks like, because this is not a SSS skin material with an HDRI and multiple layers of spec, right? So you have to export this out if you want an accurate representation of what this looks like. In your opinion, what is the easiest program to quickly rig a character? Probably Mixamo. Mixamo is an online service as an auto rigger. But I mean, like, again, I'm not a rigger. Nobody would be using Mixamo for any kind of serious rigging. But I sometimes use Mixamo for super quick poses for my characters. I know that in like the main industry, right, film and games, Maya is the preferred rigging tool. Specifically why that is, I'm generally not sure. It's because, again, not a rigger, but it seems like the tools are just really mature, but also because there's just a big ecosystem of development happening there. So probably a lot of scripts and all that kind of stuff. But again, not a rigger. So an ad for I think it was an auto rigging solution for Blender yesterday, and it said like, now rigging finally becomes easy. And it was like a 10-minute tutorial on how to like do skin shading, or how to do like skinning and such in Blender using apparently a new add-on. I'm like sure it's a good add-on and all that, but it's just rigging is just never easy. Rigging is just complicated. It's the same as sculpting, right? Like it's just you just need to know many things in order to do it well. If you're using Maya, you can also look into auto riggers as well. Like in general, you want to look into auto riggers. Like in Maya, you have advanced skeleton. There is no reason at all to build something from scratch. Like if you were to be rigging a character, you're not going to start with like, all right, here's one joint, here's another joint, skin this to that. I mean, and then you're building all the setups for it. Use something that's pre-made, because anything else is just insane. How many UDIMs would be needed to display the amount of detail seen on a 150-meter kaiju? It's not really even the size of the kaiju, because that's all relative, right? Like what if you're dealing with a 10-centimeter long like mouse or something versus a 150-meter tall kaiju, like what matters is the distance to camera. So if you have a kaiju, I assume Shrek here is a kaiju, and he's this far away, you don't really need more than like one UDIM for it. But if he's like this, you probably need a lot of UDIMs. I don't know what I can't remember what the kaijus we had for Pacific Rim 2 had. It was something like 150 UDIMs or something, but I think that was 4K. Of course, the resolution also depends entirely on how many UDIMs. Depends, of course, entirely on the resolution as well, because 8K is 4 times the amount of a 4K map. So if you were to have, like, you can do the math, right? But you can't just say, oh, you need 100 UDIMs. Okay, is that 4K or is that 8K or is it 1K? Because 64 UDIMs, 1K, is equivalent to 1 UDIM, 8K. So yeah, it really just depends. It's you just have to test it out, to be honest, and see what works. Because there's no way to tell. It depends entirely on how close something is to camera. Also, different parts of the body might need different resolutions as well, because if you're going to have crazy close-ups of the face, but the feet are never even close to close-up, you're not going to have the same resolution, same texture density on the face as you have on the feet, because then you're, like, technically, right, you should have the same one, but just from a practical point of view, there's just no way in hell that's going to be feasible, because then you're just wasting the vast majority of all your resources on that. Do you think that knowing rigging is very important to enter the industry? Honestly, if you want to be a rigger, it's very important. If you don't want to be a rigger, it's not very important. If you want to be a generalist at a small studio, it might be handy to do it, because then, you know, smaller studios, you need to be a bit of a generalist. But if you're going to go into games or film, then you really don't have to learn rigging unless you want to be a rigger. Some places do modeling, like Pixar is at least used to. They did rigging and modeling as the same thing, but honestly, the vast majority of places, they deal with rigging and modeling and texturing as entirely different things. So it's useful to know the basics, and the same when if you only want to be a modeler, knowing texturing is still really useful, because it means you're gonna just make a much more informed decision. But as a generic advice, while knowing that there are exceptions to every single bit of advice, becoming a rigger is not even remotely close to being needed in order to join the industry, unless you want to, you know, be a rigger. Like I don't really, I can kind of rig some simple stuff, right? And I have a bit of an understanding of it, but it's not like I rig some characters here and there, but it's not like it's not like I would be able to be a rigger in the industry and nobody would ever ask me to. It's just a specialized things. Things that are specialized are generally animation. There are very few animators who do a lot of other things as well, and there are very few people who do other things who also animate, meaning at this at a high level, right? Because it's such a specialized thing. Well, if you're doing modeling, learning shading isn't that big of a thing, or learning texturing is still not like that insane of a thing. There are, of course, specialists at all of those as well. People who only do look dev, only do shading, right? Who are highly specialized at that. But it's nothing compared to like rigging or anim. What kind of character would you recommend I do for my portfolio to get a good job in cinematics? I would recommend that you don't do one character, but you do multiple characters that shows a range. So you do some like one character that might be showing a maybe something like this, right? Like a somehow realistic character like Shrek on RTX with just with high levels of details, all the kind of stuff. And then you do one that might be more of a full body, maybe with a costume, one that's maybe a knight or something, or robot, to show hard surface work. And maybe one is a full digidouble, meaning it's just a recreation of a person that exists. But there is no hard and fast rule on this. It really, really depends on what you find to be interesting as well to do. Because it's not like the studios will have a checkbox. Essentially, you just need to be able to do a good and varied job. If you do only do, let's say you only do like characters that are like, you do characters like this, right? And you have 10 of them. You might as well just do one, because the studio is going to go like, yeah, next one. That's kind of the same as the first one. We get it. You know how to do this. But if they're like, oh, cool, you have a character that's high level for something from concept art, great. Okay, you can also do another thing here that's realistic based on photogrammetry or scan, or based on photos, and then you have another one that's more for an original design, or maybe an animal. Do something that's varied. And Mr. X in Toronto, they had a dragon for Hellboy that was 900 UDIMs. They did it because they were close-ups of Hellboy riding the dragon. Yeah, that's one of the tricky things, right? If like this here is the head of the dragon, and you just keep having shots like this close-up of it, I mean, you just kind of gotta do it. There isn't really a way to avoid that in that case, because it's if you need a resolution, you need a resolution. At that point, it becomes almost like a technical infrastructure challenge, because how do you actually do that? Like, even just laying things out over 900 UDIM becomes challenging. So yeah, at that point it becomes a very, very different challenge. You also reach like it becomes a rendering issue, just technically getting the data out, or how do you even texture that. So if you are texturing something like that, you might need to just do that more procedurally, maybe painting a lot of nice masks in Mari for it, and then making really good tileables, and then doing a lot of it just in look dev, like whatever, I don't know what they're using for look dev, but if it's Katana or if it's Houdini or something like that, because you reach a point where you just genuinely cannot paint that level of detail. 900 is really, really, really insane. Yeah, here's one as well, like about the close-up of it. Like somebody saying that there's a shot from the Godzilla 2014 with the foot is up close. For that, you might even have to do a separate build for it, where you're going like, yeah, we have Godzilla, and then we have Godzilla foot as a whole separate build, where you just up-res it like crazy, because you genuinely can't do, let's say you have a character like this, right, and you have one shot that's this up close on it. You cannot make everything to that to support that resolution. It's not even a technical thing, it's also just that, man, that's gonna take just a very, very, very long time. Do you think that creating well-constructed character parts, just like the bust or a part of the equipment, but well done, adds to the portfolio? Yeah, absolutely can. If you don't always have to make all characters as full characters, right? You can do a head, or you can also do, let's say it's a character who he's in a costume. You can show just the costume, or you can show just one of the props as well if it's well done. That's one of the arguments for making a really hardcore character, like really, or something that's really overkill, is that you kind of get multiple pieces of a portfolio in one go. Let's say you're making like Nathan Drake from Uncharted, and you were to build him in full costume. So there you'd be showing, like, let's assume this is current days, right? And not when it came out, because it's a bit old now. But then you would be showing like either like a likeness, because I'm not sure if he's built on a specific person, but at least you'll be showing photorealistic human. You'll be showing a really high level outfit. You might be showing some props, you know how to do that. You'll be showing optimization of the character. So you'll be showing all sorts of different things already there. You might be showing that you know how to do groom for, because you're showing with a haircut. So having one thing like that isn't really like one portfolio piece. It's really, really multiple pieces if you do it well. This is actually live and not pre-recorded. Yeah, all live. You can check out the other streams we had as well. Unless, of course, I anticipated that question and I already put it into the pre-recorded one. No, this is all live. We've never done a live stream which hasn't been live. I don't actually know how to do that, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, building something like a kaiju, speaking from experience, is really fun, but it's really challenging because they're just so large. That's the issue with, like, if you have a dog, right? Like, they're dog sized, they're probably not going to be shown that close up on the camera, but if you do have something that is 150 meters tall, it's just going to be shown a lot more close up on the camera than what a dog sized dog would be, just realistically speaking. So yeah, you just need to find out how to deal with that. It's a bit like if you're dealing with like lizards as well. Lizards are just uniquely annoying to deal with because they're having they have all the scales. So it's just a very different challenge. For reptiles, it's better to sculpt in the detail, so you use the displacement map. Step 1, cry. Step 2, cry some more. Step 3, figure out how to do that doing tests. Honestly, you just have to do like a bit of a vertical slice, figure out how to do that, because it depends on the reptile. It depends how close up it's going to be. But yeah, this is reptiles for me are uniquely challenging just because of that. Like, so if you're dealing with a crocodile, crocodiles have fairly large scales. So in that case, you do have to sculpt a lot of that. For a Komodo dragon, where they have a lot smaller scales, like much more smaller scales, there you can get away with tiling things across, but only to a certain degree. So it is just challenging. It genuinely just is really challenging to do anything like that. You just have to test it out. There isn't really a best way to do it. Figure out how close up is going to be to the camera and then deal with that accordingly. Usually it's going to be a bit of a mix between those. The issue is just that you can't really sculpt a full character. Like, you can't really sculpt all the scales for a Komodo dragon just because you will run out of resolution. You will need like several 100 million polygons on a sculpt like that in order to make that actually work. Otherwise it's just not going to work. So a mix of both is probably the way you want to do it. Whenever I'm making characters like that, I will spend a lot of time just on tilables in the beginning. Really try to make some high quality tilables, high quality maps. Every single moment you spend on a high quality tileable is something you get back manyfold later on. Are those skin patches you're using from a pack that you sell online on the site? Yes, it is. This is from the face kit. I'll send a link to this one. So this is a kit we came up with a few years ago. We also have the skin kit as well. I'll send a link to this again. So these are really high quality skin kits for doing this. So this isn't even a demo for doing it. Like, I'm not even like advertising this here now. I'm just generally just using it because it's such a good kit. So I use this all the time whenever I'm making skin, because it's just a good quality kit for this kind of work. But of course it's also a lot of manual sculpting as well. But yeah, this kind of stuff is all, you can see here, it's about 18 million polys, and it's all just sculpting. Nothing here is textures. All right, I think it's time to export out a displacement map. So first off, it's time to save this guy out, because he has been saved for about an hour and a half. So I'll show you my setup for displacement maps here. The setup is honestly quite simple. So I also sent a link to this earlier as well. I might still have that up. Anyway, it's in the chat if you just go up a little bit. So the settings for this is, the settings here depend on which render engine you are using, which software you are using. What I'm doing now is specific for Arnold. Let's see if ZBrush wants to collaborate here. So what you need to do is you need to go to preferences. This is a weird thing with ZBrush, right? Preferences. Not specifically for disp maps, vector disp maps, vdisp maps. So here we go to import export, and then we set this here to 47 and this to 25. It has to be set to these settings here, otherwise it's not going to work. Then we go to our trusted multi-map exporter here, and then we enable vector displacement map, set this to the resolution we want, make sure the file names are set here to UDIM, and then we go to, in this case, I'm exporting some from subtable 2, and then we just enable all of this. And then we do create all maps, and then I'm doing this on the second monitor, and then I'm going to be exporting this out, and this is just going to take a little bit of time here. So let's just put this into the Shrek folder. Then we go save. There we go. So this is going to take about 2 minutes or so. Hey, I found the GPU render in Arnold doesn't render color within the hair. I have no idea what that is. If it doesn't render, then that sounds like a bug in Arnold or a bug with the implementation of your GPU. So just double check that it actually is a GPU issue. If not, I mean, you probably just have to deal with the CPU rendering for that, which is a bit annoying. But I find that our GPU rendering Arnold is okay, but it's really good when it works. But it's a little bit buggy as well. It's a little bit crash prone. So it's not the greatest thing in the world. I prefer cycles for GPU rendering itself. I'd prefer Arnold for rendering because I think Arnold is a more refined and better render engine. But I think this GPU rendering specifically is better in cycles. I wonder, where's the lore origin for the name of your company from, and whose idea was that? Yeah, so 2013, Morten and I are sitting down and we're like, let's make a company. And we are like, okay, we need a name for this. So we go through the menus in Maya. And let's see if I have this, I can show this afterwards. But we just go through all the menus in Maya to see if there are any cool names there. So some of the ones we found, this was again before PBR, so you had blurry reflections. And we're like, maybe blurry reflections, probably not, maybe. And we had Play Blast because that's kind of cool, but it's a bit more animations oriented, right? If I were an anim company, probably wouldn't Play Blast, I reckon. One of them was Flip Normals. It's currently called Reverse Normals, so you can't find that within Maya. But yeah, that was where it came from. We just went through that and we're like, yeah, we kind of like that. One of the reasons I kind of like the name is because it works for people outside of the industry as well, because they have no idea what it means, right? But they can pronounce it and they can write it perfectly fine because it's just two perfectly normal words that are put together. The issue with it, of course, is that it's a bit long. Flip Normals, it's a bit It's a bit long for logos and such, but it is what it is. So yeah, that's how we came up with that. So we just went through all the different menus here. This would have been under display. It's called reverse normals now. It should be about here somewhere. Here we go, reverse. But yeah, that's the origin of that. Nothing fancy in that. We came up with that like it's 11 years ago now, which is mad. Time has flown by. This sculpt here wasn't even supposed to be like a serious sculpt. I was just doodling around and I thought, well, this kind of looks like Shrek. So I gave him some ears. And then I was like, what if Shrek voted for Brexit? So I was like, well, we can do that. So yeah, it's a stupid sculpt, but it is what it is. Kind of rename it with a Maya. I will have to rename this in the other one there. In the actual, it doesn't matter, I can just use these names. It's fine. Here you can see the VDIS for it, just the vector displacement for it. So we just plug in this in, and then that's really it. Now we should be able to render. There's also a chance that Maya is going to explode as well. Who knows? Because there's always a chance that Maya explodes. Maya, a little bit crash prone sometimes. Particularly when dealing with XGen. Then dealing with XGen, dealing with GPU rendering, my god. That is like playing with nitroglycerin on a horse. Unbalances parenthesis at position 11. Unbalanced parenthesis. Aha, I think we're actually dealing with it. We have an actual issue here. So I'm just going to fix the naming here real quick. Typical unbalanced parenthesis. Just fixing this now on the other monitor. Can just drag it over here so we can see what I'm doing. It's very exciting. Going in here and then just fixing this silly parenthesis. Bit hard to type because I have a giant microphone right in front of me. But that is what it is. So we're just doing this. And then we are going to be loading this in. Here's a cool tip. If you want to just quickly select this path here, just Alt and D, just select it much faster. You can also use the Windows Explorer for this menu as well. So we just select one of them and there we go. And just make sure UDIM is selected and no more unbalanced parentheses. So let's see how this looks. Let's bring this up here. And this is probably just going to take some time. Hopefully it does not screw up the recording or the stream in any way, but who knows what's going to happen when we deal with this. So I'm just going to save another one, just making sure we have it here. Then I'll just save again. I have massive trust issues with this software. Do you ever use Houdini? Do you ever use Houdini Groom or XGen? I would love to, but don't really have it available, to be honest. I haven't really used much Houdini, so and it's a cost issue. I would love to use Houdini for grooming, but I did a math yesterday for Arnold and Houdini a year with the indie versions. It would be like $640, I think, per year. So no reason to add that expense. Here's a good question. Hey, they're very interested in your courses, but the price for me is high as I'm in India, where the average income is lower. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't do specific region pricing at the moment. That is something that would maybe be interesting to do in the future, but currently that's not really something we have as an option, unfortunately. So I just did a full update of the scene, and this is going to take some time, so let's jump back into the ZBrush. So it should look more refined now. This might just have to go for a bit. It should look more refined, but we don't know until we know. Just letting people on the Flip Normals Discord know about the stream as well. Yeah, it's still going in my... I had to wait for a few minutes before. So that is what it is. Essentially what I'm looking at here is I'm trying to make sure that there are no surfaces here that are super clean. So this here area here is too clean at the moment. How long did it take to export this high poly to bake in Substance? I didn't actually do that. I haven't baked any of those maps at this point. What I did instead was I just exported a decimated version to use in Mari. I painted all this in Mari as well. Well, not this, right? I painted the textures in Mari, but yeah, I just did a decimated one, which you can do very easily. C plugin, well, it's over here. A C plugin, and then it's just Decimation Master. We just have to wait while this here is updating because it's a bit of a heavy C now, so it's a bit annoying to work with. But yeah, you don't have to bake maps, even if you're painting in Mari. You know, even you're painting in Painter, you don't have to bake anything at all. You can. It might be helpful, but you don't really have to. This is a really good question actually from that one 3D artist. Some people who try to sculpt a realistic model have a very plastic face look to their eyes, also known as Uncanny Valley. How would an artist get past that? I hope this makes sense. The way I kind of think about this, there are multiple avenues for this one here, but one of them is, let's say you were to take a person from the street, just a perfectly generic person, not generic people, but just a perfect average looking person off the street, and you were to ask them to like shave their head, shave their eyebrows, and put them in a white studio environment and remove their glasses and like shave their beards if they have that, right? And then you ask them to look straight ahead. That's going to be a really, really crappy photo, isn't it? Because you removed anything that might make them interesting. So it's a perfectly realistic person because it's a real human. It has to be realistic. But if you were to have somebody who was the same person, but they now have a really nice like costume, or the clothing is really nice, they have good makeup on, they have really nicely done hair, or if they're bald, they have a nice shiny head, all that kind of stuff, right? And you were to ask them to pose nicely, the lighting is nice, and you take a photo with good camera, with like a little bit of blur, good lens, all that kind of stuff, that's going to look very different, isn't it? Even though they're just as realistic, like the person is the same person, it's everything else around them. So in this scenario, you really have to be sure that you're not just thinking about this in a purely technical manner, because that's real easy to do, where the only thing you focus on is trying to make the skin shading as realistic as possible. You have to take into consideration all the other things as well. So if you're dealing with a person and they are shaved and they are without clothing, they are without any kind of pose to them, and they're just looking straight ahead into the camera, not very interesting. So try to break that up, try to give them something interesting to look at, try to break up the pose a little bit. If that's done and it still looks bad, then of course look into the technicals, right? So the uncanny valley is really difficult to cross. One of the ways you cross it is just by spending a lot of time crossing it. You just go into every single part of the model, which would be all the different frequencies. Will go into the UV map, the texture maps, the shaders, trying to make the lighting more realistic and all that. But really try to think about the real world applications of the character. If you're a costume designer now and a makeup artist, how would you turn this character into something that's interesting? A good example here would be Johnny Depp, for instance, like how he looks different every single movie, or Gary Oldman looks completely different every single movie. So if you're a good costume designer or good makeup artist, anything like that, you can just do some really, really interesting stuff with that. So I think that's a very, very good idea. And I'm having tons of messages here, so let's see what's going on. That is why we save. Let's hit this button and see what happens. This may or may not crash completely. Why do you always make these ugly and disgusting character sculpts? I just find them to be more fun, to be honest. there's no deeper psychological thing here. I just kind of like them. I think it's cool to make ugly, nasty characters. Shrek is kind of hot though. I don't know about that, but you know, everyone has a right to their opinion, I suppose. Not sure if this is rendering. Let's close this down. And yeah, this is what I'm talking about. I didn't really do anything here. The only thing I did is I just updated the scene, and then it's getting a bit crashy. But it's also a bit of a heavy scene. It's not even crazy heavy, but yeah, that's why I have trust issues. Oh, here's a message by Jude. I also want to say I'm a student at Bournemouth University during a lecture, and it was really good and informative. Would you recommend doing a master's or doing a mentorship for a job? Yes, I was in Bournemouth about 2 months ago or so with my girlfriend as well. Really fun. Just did a nice talk. I had a sculpting demo beforehand. Then we had one. I had a sculpting demo afterwards, and my girlfriend was talking about Framestore, so that was really nice. And yeah, thank you for your kind words. It's always nice to hear that you enjoyed our little talk. If I recommend doing a mentorship or a master's, it depends entirely on you, to be honest. It depends on your portfolio. It depends so much on that. Doing a master's, I generally don't really recommend it, unless, because it's very, very expensive, right, to do. So it would be like if you've done 3 years of school already, and if you're nowhere near getting a job, which may or may not be, I don't know you, right? Then doing another year may not be the thing that you need. So I would figure out why your portfolio isn't to the level that you might be satisfied with, and then go with that. If you want to do characters right, then it might be an idea to do a mentorship. It might be an idea to just spend a lot of time just outside of school and learning with that. Figure out what you would also learn from the masters. So in the masters at Bournemouth, realistically, you're not going to learn a whole lot about characters, right? Like, I've been there now. Like, that was the thing I was teaching when I was there. I was at the master's class, and like for the master's students, and there really wasn't a lot of character work before I got there. So I would say figure out what you want to do, and figure out what resources you can use to get there. I really don't think that automatically doing a master's is going to help a lot. Of course, I'm biased with a mentorship because I do run my own mentorship, so I always think that's a good idea. But it also that isn't for everyone, because like with everything, like there is a cost to it as well. And masters, mentorships, all that kind of stuff, even tutorials, right? They can be costly. But yeah, depends what you want to do. So let me know, Jude, what you want to actually do for your like to get into the industry, and then I can give a better recommendation there. Also, Maya is just mega crashing now, so I'm just gonna brute force this one. So a little tip here is Control, Shift, and Escape just brings up the task manager here. Yeah, so Maya is currently being very annoying. I think there is also I think my antivirus is going a bit nuts here. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. I think it might have accidentally flagged my GPU as malware. So this is what we save, because I have massive trust issues. What is the character you are most proud of? Yeah, I've had this question a few times. I keep answering different things because my brain wanders to different characters. One of the things I keep talking about is the alien from Alien Covenant. That was such an interesting project. But also Ghost Sharks and Pirates 5 was really interesting as well. that was a lot of fun. Doing did some like zombies for, I guess, mummies for the Mummy movies, with the Tom Cruise one years back as well. That was also really fun. Just sculpting a crazy nasty mummies for a while. But yeah, there were so many fun characters to do. It's really hard to have a favorite. I also really like, speaking of, I really like, let's see here. I really like this guy here. I think he's a lot of fun as well. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with, well, I had a lot of fun with this guy. This course came out like 2 years ago now. So I think this is a really fun one to do. So let's hope Maya wants to open at some point. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maya is very, very, very slow because, well, it is what it is. So you see this one here. I was a bit mad at XGen. Let's see what happens. for me, Maya is like a tractor, which I don't even mean in a good or a bad way. I just mean like it's a heavy industrial machinery, which can do really, really heavy things. But at the same time, it's still like running a tractor, right? It's not like that's a thing you just kind of turn on. While Blender is almost more like an electric vehicle in a sense. You just like jump in and it's fast and it's fun to do. But man, it's not. It doesn't have a lot of range, and it's it can be, while it's a fun one to do, it's still a bit in the infancy, right? So pros and cons to both. The problem is if you're using the wrong tool for the job, meaning if you're using a tractor for something where you should be using an electric vehicle, or the opposite, right? So pros and cons. Let's see here. Let's throw this open here and let's do our little render. I love GPU rendering as well. I mean, even though I'm raging at the moment because it is what it is, but it's still a really, really good tool. Yeah, I think I lost my Arnold render view. I think that just kind of disappeared. Generally don't know where that went. It just kind of disappeared right away. Come on, Arnold. All right, time to restart Maya again. I had this before where Maya just, like, it would just perma disappear, the Arnold render view, and I had to like delete my preferences because the render view was gone. You know, 3D, do Shrek they said, it will be fun, they said. So let's just have a quick look at this guy here. Let's do some questions while we're waiting actually for this. That's one of the reasons I always do sculpting for these streams and not all the other stuff, because sculpting is just reliable mostly, right? It's just kind of moving points in and out, which is great. And the problem with sculpting is also it's really hard to talk and do it at the same time. That was something I had to just spend a lot of time to learn. But hey, here we go. Here's the render view. But rendering or anything technical is also really hard as well, because it's stuff just goes wrong. You're just doing the best you can, and then suddenly everything just crashes, right? There's just nothing you can do about that. Jude is saying, so I would love to, I'd really like to get into character sculpting, and I have a few portfolio pieces, but I went to a networking event and they just said that the sculpts were nice, but I needed more. Also, big up into the anatomy and intro to Mari. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do character art, then I think it's a very good idea to just go hardcore sculpting. Just really get into figure sculpting and portrait sculpting, and then build a portfolio with that. Just the truth when it comes to characters, when you want to, if you want to, you know, that's what you're specifically doing. Almost no matter what university or school or course you're taking, unless it's a specific character course, you're not gonna get better at characters with that. You're just gonna be paying, for the master's art, you're just gonna be paying a lot of money, and you're just not gonna get a lot of character dudes to look at your art, just because there just aren't a lot of character modules in that. So that's just the unfortunate truth with that. That's why, like, you know, I don't want to be like a complete shill here when it comes to like just recommending phenomenal products here, because that's not the answer to everything. But getting high quality courses is really one of the, like, it will be like getting a high quality book, right? It is genuinely one of the ways you need something you need to learn. You need basically like 3 things to learn. You need high quality instructions. That's 1. 2, you need to practice a lot. And 3, you need high quality feedback. So for number 1, you need high quality instructions, books, instructions and lectures, all the kind of stuff is all great, but you need stuff that's up to date and is solid. So whatever resource you get there, it's totally fine. Courses are a great way. It's not the best way, depending on a person, but it is one way. For high quality feedback, that is where unis are really, really not good for characters, because the teachers don't know how to do characters. Like generally, nearly a very, very, very few teachers have any kind of expertise when it comes to character art. That's not even like putting down teachers, universities or something. It's just that's just a purely factual thing. There are very, very few character artists with industry experience who are doing teaching, like full-time universities. And then like practicing as well. That's something you do need just feedback to help you with. So it's really hard, but you for character art, you genuinely just need to sculpt a lot. That's really the foundation for everything, I think. That's a bit of a non-answer for me, to be honest, but it's really, really difficult to gain the skills to be a character artist without like sitting with you a bit more like hands-on with things, because it's just a really involved thing. That's why I do the mentorship I do, right? Because it's because I get to be very hands-on with people and really like take people's art to the next level. But it's just inherently a hard issue getting into character art. Yeah, Maya is the tricky software. You can see now that it's working. It's working really well. Like this is like 2.5 minutes into it, and it's, you know, looking quite decent. So I just want to check out the main face region here, and the whole thing is going to take about 15 minutes to render, I think, at least based on previous experience. This is without denoising or anything like that. So it's already looking a bit better. The nose is looking sharper. A lot of areas are just generally looking a bit sharper for this. So that's a lot of fun. Earlier you said that your settings for export displacement map is specific for Arnold. What settings would you recommend for cycles? I don't know. It's not even like what would I recommend for it. It is because it's not like a quality slider, right? From like quick to high quality. It's just that you need specific settings for specific render engines, and I don't know the settings for cycles, so that's something you would just have to experiment with. It's going to be the settings that I mentioned before here in ZBrush, the way preferences, and these two here. You're gonna have to find two numbers for this. What you can do is you can find that people can already give you the settings for these ones. You can just search for it, right? Like find it on Google or something, but it's not known what they are. Like if it's not known what they are, you just have to experiment with that, and that is very annoying. Let's see here as well. I'm just seeing if there's a tutorial on this. Sometimes when I'm looking at this, I'm looking for tutorials for this. Ends up that I've already made a tutorial on this and I have forgotten. And that is always good fun, particularly when it's like, man, I never knew this. And it's literally my own videos being shown. So let's see. Because I made a video on doing it for Arnold, I think. Let's have a quick look here. But yeah, you can use this here. This is the this link here. This is for Arnold. But the settings are from ZBrush. Like this is at least where I hint where you should do this. How did you add the thin line of water where the water line meets the eyeball? That is the meniscus. This is honestly quite simple to do. It's one of those things that's overcomplicated. It's just a line. It's just a line like this that is, well, it looks like this. I'm going to have to move this over the current as well, because it's currently missing that. But honestly, it's just a box that looks like this, and it's just kind of self-selected into place. And yeah, that's kind of it. Simple stuff. It just has a basic glass material for it. This is a wet line here. This is just a with transmission set to, well, just enabled fully, and then just IOR 1.5, a low roughness value, well, a roughness of 0, just to make it super sharp and nice. And that just looks really nice. Like very simple stuff. Might take a bit of time to find the specific settings for it though, but honestly, it makes a big difference. I'm going to do a render region just for this region here, just to see what this looks like. I think it's a very good idea to do render regions like this as well. It's so powerful. I'm also trying to make the peach fuzz work a little bit as well. You can see there's a bit of peach fuzz here, so I was playing with this for a few hours before the stream as well. Absolute travesty with how how long that took. I sat with this like last night as well. How did you create the eye? I am curious. That is terrible pun and a good question. So let me show you. The way we did the eye is we didn't. I just threw in the Flip Normal's eye kit for this. This again was not going to be a shill for the eye kit, but I legit think this is probably the best eye kit made on the market. The reason I think so is because I keep asking people to find a better eye available like commercially, and I can't find any. This eye here is definitely like VFX quality. I know this because I've compared this to other characters, other eyes that we had in VFX, and I haven't found anything that was as good as this, or rather the eye that we had in VFX was, you know, comparable to this. Don't think it would have worked this crazy close up though. So it's really really interesting how close up the eyes actually get. So also this is not like a separate build or something. This is just taking the eye and just zooming really close into it. So this eye legit holds up really well. I use this for everything. Like I use this for all my characters. This is just the hazel eye, I think it is. So it's also, this is on sale, right? So I just want to mention that. So this is currently $30, and hey, look at the ratings. So yeah, just really, really high quality. These are drag and drop for Arnold, drag and drop for Blender, drag and drop for Marmoset 4 as well, and not drag and drop for anything else. But honestly, it's not that hard to set up. The material isn't that complicated, and it comes with all the maps, all the displacement maps for this. It's just cool to have something that genuinely is drag and drop, because man, sculpting eyes or creating eyes like this takes absolutely ages. It's genuinely a very, very time consuming thing to do. So just having something that you could just kind of throw in there is so useful. I mean, if I were to make the eyes for just this character here, this would take me a few days to do, and obviously it wouldn't work like this close up, right? Like there's no way it would work with this close up and with this much range. Notice as well that the iris is actually different between the eyes. I think we have 2 or 3 different ones. So like see the brown eye here has a completely different iris than the blue eye here. Also we have 2 scleras. The sclera is the white of the eyes. We have this here that's really nice and white, and we have this one here that's darker. So this should really be able to fit most characters, and the sclera is independent of the iris, so you can mix and match. You can have the dark sclera with blue eyes or with hazel eyes, gray eyes, all that. So it's a really, really flexible system. So just look at this guy here, render. So yeah, it's really nice and sharp now, and I am enjoying the peach fuzz as well. It's not perfect, but it's kind of getting there. So just spending time just sculpting things, I think, is a very good idea. I'm gonna try to just drag this a bit further down. Actually, I want to see the ear as well, because I did some sculpting on the ear. So I just broke this up a little bit like so. I just started to cut a little bit in here just to make this a little bit nicer. A lot of times what you want to do when it comes to ears and all these kind of things is you just want to, or like in terms of sculpting, you really, really want to make a good sculpt. I think if you have a good sculpt, texturing becomes so much easier. So really spending time on the sculpt is invaluable. See how long we have been going for so far. We've been going for 1 hour and 40 minutes. Hey, not bad. But also, if you guys are interested in just more of these streams as well, like we've done a ton of these in the past. If you just go to our YouTube channel, I suppose you are already here at the moment, and you just check out the past streams we've done. There are just a lot of them. So if you just want to work and just listen to me talk and sculpt some different things. We had one last year, it was really fun, where I was sculpting Lilith from Diablo. I think that was for Black Friday. So that was really fun. Really enjoyed that. And yeah, yesterday I sculpted, I think I want to take this further as well, because I kind of enjoy this character. It was the this dude here. This is 2 hours or so. So I would definitely want to take this a bit further, because I think this is a really fun character. I want to make this into like a really like despairing looking character. Maybe I'll even like texture him as well and see how we get on with that. There was a question some days ago that was actually really good. It was like, how do I stay motivated if I have multiple projects? It's kind of like work on multiple projects at the same time. I think it's cool to work on this character and then work on Shrek for a bit. obviously this is really rough, right? But then just work on them for like 1 day for this, 1 day for that. It keeps it fresh. I don't think there's any reason to just stay on one project until it is done, because my God, that can be draining, like just mentally very, very, very draining. Here's also how I'm feedback in my own work. I tend to do these kind of, tend to do a lot of these renders all the time. So here's a little tip, or just kind of relating to this before we get into that, is over the whole thing, I have a skin alpha that's just being tiled over the whole thing, which I'm not entirely sure where this one is. It's up here. So there's a bump one here, and I just have something plugged in here. Yeah, so I have a tileable. So these are from the Flipnormal skin kit, I think it is. And these are just going over the whole thing. So this just means that there is a layer over this whole thing that just breaks it up really nicely. It just gives you this like really like noisy, nice feel to it. But the problem is it's too noisy in some areas. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to go in here and I'll really have to just paint a mask to reduce this, because it's way too intense at the moment. So I think it's a really good idea to do tons of test renders. And that's also one of the reasons I haven't done too much rendering before, like in the last few years, because my projects were getting heavier, but my GPU was kind of crappy. So it was genuinely really hard for me to do any kind of rendering like this. I wasn't able to really look at the peach fuzz. I opened up the project recently, like before, just after I got the new GPU, the 480 Super, and I couldn't really see the peach fuzz before, and like I legit couldn't see what it looked like because it took hours and hours with the CPU. Right, I'm going to continue maybe for like 10-20 more minutes. So if you guys have any more questions, just shoot them my way and I will see if I can get to that. It can be anything, right? Like there were some good questions before, but like about what do you do with further education or anything like that. Very happy to answer anything in regards to those things as well. Let me just throw a link to, since there was some questions about mentoring as well. This is just my own mentorship. This is next to Flipnormals, but you guys might be interested in this as well. Are there any other details similar to this one that you should that should be implemented in a character sculpt outside of the waterline and peach fuzz? Yes. You should think about costume design. Honestly, genuinely, I know this is a bit of a different answer, but genuinely think about costume design. You can't just sculpt the character like this and be like, yeah, it's done. I can, because I don't care, because I'm not showing this to any employer. But if you want to have ultimate appeal on this kind of stuff, you really want to like just think about the costume design, think about the character. In terms of the other things as well, is that like yeah, you mentioned peach fuzz, right? But think about peach fuzz and think about hair. Like look at the hair in his nose. No, that's not the most elegant thing to show, but just notice the hairs within Shrek's nose. This kind of stuff can make a big difference. Also, one thing that tons of people don't think about when they're sculpting is, I'll show this. So this is here we have a character, right? Oops, I just signed out. Let's hope this didn't break stream. It did not. Great. So let me show you what I mean. So here we have a character like this, and what's really easy to forget is that you don't just have pores going out. You have pores going in. You also have these kind of little skill imperfections. This is from the skin kit, but doing this kind of stuff is so useful. Asymmetrical pimples or skin imperfections like this makes a huge difference in the character. So I really recommend adding these kind of lines into it. Another one as well can be something you can add in. This is more of a shading trick. I genuinely can't remember if I've done this or not on this character. Let's have a quick look, because this is quite old. Well, it's like, I don't know, a year old or something at this point. But what I really recommend is that you have two layers. I do actually have it here. You have two layers of spec. You have one that is the specular, which is the specular roughness, which can be quite rough. So it's see if I have it here. Yeah, I actually have this here. So this is the specularity, and then you can have another one as a coat on top. In this case, it's actually opposite. One is the specular is a bit and they just have different weights to them. So this is like, this can be a really handy way of doing it, just breaking it down into specularity and code, because you can generally make something that's quite interesting with this. So yeah, I recommend doing both code and specularity, because you can really start to break it up. You can see here as well, right? See all this nice little breakup we have. So doing this is super useful. Code is also really cool. Also this here, it reacts to the displacement map, but it doesn't react to the bump, which can be really handy because it just means you generally have another layer on top of it, like so. So doing both is really useful. That's also in the other things to think about. Also, one thing that tons of people forget is that right here, we have the carunculum. This is the tear duct. This is something that's really important to get in. When you're sculpting, make sure to get this part here into the character. Other things. What other things would there be? Asymmetry. The character is always asymmetrical, right? Like no character in the history of the world has ever been symmetrical. So whenever you're doing something at the end, or at the end of the sculpt, just kind of like this character here is going to be punched in the face, right? Do something like this, where you just kind of break it up. Just do something like this. You can see how much more character there is in him right away, just from doing this kind of stuff. So just kind of bash him up. This is something you can even do with a blend shape, right? Just really just do something crazy like this, and do it throughout the whole thing, like not just in terms of the shape, but like in terms of sculpting as well, because then it's just going to look a lot more organic. It's going to look a lot more interesting this way. So I really do recommend asymmetry. So much more character in this. Here's a good question by Sombra. Sorry, maybe you didn't see it, but could you, in theory, rig and animate this face, or was it not made with this in mind? You could, but if I was animating this character here, there are two main things. The first one is that he's not asymmetrical. Well, he is asymmetrical, it's not symmetrical. The reason for that is that just kind of started as a fun little silly sculpt, and I did that without symmetry. So in that case, I would have to symmetrize him. I wouldn't technically have to symmetrize him. You can have an asymmetrical sculpt, but it would just be kind of silly, because it means that if you do blend shapes or something, right, or skinning, you have to do both sides. So I would have to symmetrize them first, which would mean that it would require a bit of sculpting on top and such. It would take me like a few hours to do maybe. And then you have the bigger issue, is that check out the topology for this guy here. This is where I did him dirty. This is where I just click the button just to do zero meshing for him. It's fine. You can't see this in a render, right? Like it looks fine in the render, but just keep that in mind, that zero meshing works really well for certain things, and it works when you kind of know what you're doing. But for animation, this is not animatable. Like this is going to cause all sorts of issues. And one of the issues, for instance, is that his mouth cannot be opened because there is no mouth cavity. And same with the eye as well. Notice how like dirty this kind of stuff is, right? So this could, in theory, be animated. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with the character design or something like that, because, you know, he's just a fairly standard looking guy. Bit of a swampy feel to him, but there's nothing like weird anatomical about him. So he could have, but no, not this character here. Is it better to pose the character after or before texture baking? Posing is basically like, if you were to think about this in a bigger context, it's almost like animation. So there are two different things, right? So you could do this like at the same time, really. You could have somebody who's animating a character while as you're doing texturing and look type on it. So yeah, it really just depends. I would just do this, if this was a simple project for myself, I would have done this in a linear fashion, which would have been, I would do the texturing, then I would do the shading, then I would do the rigging, then I would do the posing at the end. But there's no reason, there's no like logic, so there is no hard logic in that. You can do whatever you want to do. There is no absolute rule that you have to do one thing before the other. But yeah, really good question, guys. So let's just have a quick look here. Do you offer masterclasses, masterclass mentorships that goes over how to create projects to this fidelity from start to finish? Yeah, I've had a few of those actually that I've gone over how to create characters like this with, like from start to finish. Those would be the 8 weeks ones. For the 8-week mentorships, I sometimes just teach people how to sculpt faces, how to do anatomy, and sometimes it's just full on portfolio. It really just depends on what people want to do. But yeah, I've done a fair few of those. Check out the link before as well, so if you're interested in that. Okay, so 2 questions here by Burke. On Flipboard's Marketplace, which course do you recommend for character artists in the film industry? All right, cool. Let's talk about that. So I do recommend this one here. This is Realistic Character Portrait Masterclass. This one is solid. Like, this uses Blender instead of Maya, but kind of the same thing, right? There was nothing unique about Blender about this apart from the hair, because that's a bit specific in Blender. But really, this one here covers the whole process. So this one is from the first sculpt, lining it up to a concept, and sculpting the crap out of the character, which includes a high frequency as well. We're actually using the exact same method for the high frequency here as what I'm doing for Shrek at the moment. And then we take it through retopology. This is in Blender, but you know, topology is topology. Then we take it through the UV mapping process, showing you how you can do a professional UV layout. Then texture painting this from scratch in Painter. Then shading and lighting in Blender. And yeah, then a final render. So I really do recommend this one here. One I do always recommend is Intro to Anatomy. I think this is a really, really valuable one because people keep asking, how do I learn anatomy? So I just kind of made a course for that, just to focus on that. Another one I recommend as well is Intro to Sculpting. I think these are, like, these two go really well hand in hand, because Intro to Sculpting, like, these are taught by me, by the way. So Intro to Sculpting covers how to sculpt, and Intro to Anatomy is an additional course that covers anatomy specifically. After completing your mentorships, do you offer giving referrals to your students? Yeah, if it's something that I've done this a few times now. If it's an honest referral that I can say that, yeah, this person here, based on my experience, would be a fantastic addition to your team, absolutely I would. Liana is saying, I already bought a bunch of tutorials during the summer sale. I'm so happy with them. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I hope you really enjoy, or you continue to enjoy the tutorials. All right, next to Burke, go back to Burke's first question. Hey Henning, I hope you're doing well. I'm a freelance 3D modeler, but I would like to learn new things always. And also I would like to work in the film industry, such as Frames or Dina Go Weta. Right, that wasn't a question. I thought it was the first question. I mean, that would be cool. Really hope you make it for that. That would be really cool. Those are really nice studios to work from. Really, really cool projects. One thing I would say with Weta is just that it's really far away from everything else. So I'm sure New Zealand is a great place to work in many ways, but man, New Zealand is far away. If you're American, it's far away from America, or Canadian, right? Or in the Americans in North or South. Really far away from that. If you're from Europe, really far away from that. If you're from Asia, still really far away from that. The only thing is not far away from is New Zealand, and even that it's still far away from. It's just a really far away place. And the issue with Weta is also that, again, nothing against Weta, but it's if you lose your job, it's kind of just Weta, and then you're a 44-hour travel away from Europe. So that's always a bit rough. But yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. Very happy to answer questions. I'm just going to keep doodling on this guy here for a little bit longer now, and then we'll call it a day. This is my 6th stream this week and a half, I think. It's been a lot of streaming. I'm really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun just to connect with you guys. A lot of good questions. And yeah, it's just fun to have dedicated time to sculpt as well, like this. I'm in Germany, but yeah, you're right, very far away. Yeah, one of the things that people don't really think about when it comes to like VFX and such, or if you want to work in these studios, is it's really easy to just go, yeah, just move to New Zealand, just move to a new country. But man, moving to a new country can suck as well. I mean, you have to move away from family, from friends. You also need visa for these places as well. Like if you were in Germany some years ago, you could of course just come to the UK, but because of Brexit, you no longer can do that. So this means that you now need a visa. which also means if you come to London, you work for DNEG, you're on a visa specifically for DNEG, you can't just move jobs because, you know, the visa is specifically for DNEG. So it got a lot harder with that. Same if you want to go to Canada, might be possible to get a job in Canada as well. But I mean, the visa is just really hard. Same if you want to work in the US. Man, getting a green card or getting a visa is not an easy thing to do or to get. At least Germany has like an adequate VFX industry. I wouldn't say a great VFX industry, but it does actually have an industry, Pixmondo, Trickster, what is a Scanline? Like there is actually some high-end stuff there, unlike where I'm from in Norway, where there's basically nothing. A large Norwegian studio would be a small London studio. Like it's just a very, very, very small industry there comparatively to like Germany or like New Zealand, or I guess not even New Zealand, I guess mostly Weta, but like Australia, Canada, US and all that. What is Rexist? Oh, Brexit. That's the one. Brexit was when the UK left. Was the UK left EU, or Britain left it? You might say it was a Britain exit or a Brexit. These UK journalists with their fancy terms. There's an election in the UK tomorrow, and the opposition leader for the current party is called Keir Starmer, and he's most likely going to win in a landslide, assuming the polls are somehow correct. And the current newspaper said Starmageddon on the front page. They love their stupid terms here. But yeah, visa is just something that just genuinely just sucks. The issue is if you are on a visa and then you want to switch companies or you lose your job, then you can be in actual trouble. I've known people who had to leave the country because their visa usually didn't expire, but they lost their jobs. So it's really, really, really annoying. Like when I came to the UK, because Norway isn't in, I'm Norwegian, right? Norway isn't in the EU, but there's still tons of treaties. So when I came here, I didn't really have to do anything. It was just a case of just straight up moving. There wasn't really any approval or anything. So you just kind of moved. But today, if I had to move here, like if someone from a family wanted to move or friends from back home wanted to move here, they would actually legitimately require a visa. And you can't just get that, right? For your mentorship, is it solely feedback on sculpts, or do you also feedback texturing, rendering? Yeah, I cover basically all the things, right? I stick to characters mostly. So if it's like hard surface rendering or hard surface, I don't think I can do it right, but I don't think the mentorship is right for that. But I definitely focus on shading as well, for shading and texturing for the mentorship. Basically, it's the whole character, right? It's the same thing we're doing here with Shrek now at the moment. Like I cover all these kind of things, like how to set this kind of stuff up. But it just depends on what people want, because it's not really a generic mentorship. So the way the mentorship works is that they're not live calls. Instead, it's people submit work on assignment once a week. And then I review it through a video, kind of like what I'm doing now, right? Just that it's a recorded video, but it's a bespoke recorded video I sent to the student. And the reason for this is it's like a live call, just that it's not a live call, it's just a pre-recorded one. The reason is just that time zones really, really, really suck. Like it's really annoying dealing with like I've had people in Japan and the US and East and West Coast. There were just a lot of time zones, and people forget meetings. It's really, really annoying. So doing just the videos is really, really nice, because it means that people can submit whenever, and then I can review the work whenever. But it's always one-on-one. Like it's never like a group thing, right? People always get one-on-one feedback on it. So I find that to be very effective, and it's always feedback as well. So it's not just like, drawing over, this could be a little better, make this better, this is good. It's like specifics. I'm going over it, I'm sculpting over it, like really, really, really digging into it. And not just like how to improve the sculpt, but I'll always have to focus on how to think about things in a different manner. That's really my main thing. Honestly, I don't really care about the sculpts people are doing. I care about people's understanding. That's always what I'm doing. So it would be like, all right, cool, this is the level you're currently at. Let's improve your understanding of it so that you can make something that looks better in the future. And then we do that for usually about 8 weeks. and people improve an insane amount. It's really, really cool to see how fast people generally improve there. Why do you call this sculpt Brexit Shrek? why do I call this sculpt Brexit Shrek? My thinking is, look, in the UK during Brexit again was the political thing where there was a referendum in the UK where the Brits, they voted to join, to leave the EU. A lot of people there, they kind of look like this. So not everyone, of course, but yeah, a lot of people were this like Barry63 meme you might have seen online. Basically, a football fan with a bald head who is really angry at things. So my thinking was kind of like, what if Shrek voted for Brexit? It's really stupid, but I thought it was a little bit funny at the time. Still think it's a little bit funny, but I think it's also a really stupid sculpt. But that is, now the name kind of just stuck, so now he is Brexit Shrek. Basically, I'm putting way too much work into a visual joke. Like, nobody should spend this much time on something like I'm doing now. It's it's not a clever way to spend my time, but I'm really enjoying it. It's a fun little sculpt. I mean, if you cut away his little ears, right, and made him a different color in green, he wouldn't really look like Shrek anyway. He is Shrek in spirit. There's just something fun about the thought of like Shrek being a bit of an English football fan. A little bit sunburned, living in the swamp. The mentorship sounds really nice. Is there a schedule? Starts in November, or do you join year round? Yeah, basically whenever I have spots. There isn't really like I said, it's all based on individuals. So there is a Discord as well for it. So I know there are some people from the mentorship who are listening at the moment, but there is a Discord so people can talk to other mentees. But all the feedback is done one-to-one. So basically, whenever there is a new spot available, then I fill that spot. I usually tell people on Twitter about that, being like, hey, spot available, and then I do a call with them, and then we make sure we're in the right fit for that, and then we start whenever convenient. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing essentially. And usually people sign up for an 8-week one, or 2-month mentorship, and then some people extend, some people don't, and then we just focus on improving characters. It's genuinely fascinating to see how much people can improve over a short amount of time just with focused feedback. That's one of the things I was mentioning before, right? There are 3 main things you need in order to improve. The first one is, I'm going to try to do this without spilling my coffee all over my desk. The first one is you need quality feedback. If you don't have, quality instructions. If you don't have quality instructions, you have really nothing when it comes to sculpting or characters or learning anything, because then you're just going to be practicing and you have no direction. Number 2 is you need to have quality feedback. You just need to have somebody looking over your stuff and making sure you're going in the right direction. And number 3, you need to, this is not an acronym for anything, by the way, you need to just practice, really just need to practice. And one of the things I'm doing is, for the mentorship, I'm trying to give high quality information in terms of like anatomy, high frequency, mid frequency, all this kind of stuff, really figuring out what kind of knowledge I'm missing and then focusing on that. High quality feedback, that's one of the things I'm obviously doing in the mentorship, going over, sculpting over a sculpt, really going over that. And then you have to practice yourself, but with these 2, you should really be able to practice very effectively. The one 3D artist is saying, yeah, I'm currently enrolled and I'm on a second mentorship with Henning. Yeah, feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'm sure they were happy to give any feedback or any kind of information you need there from not me. So that's nice too. It's nice to not hear it from me, hear from other people as well. If somebody is interested in mentorship, I mean, this is a flip almost this is outside of FitNormal, so this is a FitNormal stream at the moment, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But if somebody is interested in that, just check out the website I sent before, which was henningsund.com, and you can send me an email there as well. Hey Henning, is there any formal resources to study effective UV mapping and UDIM layouts? I understand the theoretical basis, but how can I learn to become great at it? I don't really know of any like really good resources for it. Like we have some on YouTube for, there's some free on YouTube for that. But the tricky thing is that you can't just do UV mapping in isolation. You generally can't, because UV mapping is not just a thing you're doing like topology or something. It's UV mapping is the first step of texturing. So really what I recommend doing is, instead of just watching tons of tutorials for it, like, because if you understand the basics and understand how to do the layout, then I recommend playing around with different UDIM layouts, and then you try to texture them. You don't even have to do anything fancy in terms of texturing. Just try to texture them, try to go through and texture them in different ways. For instance, a UDIM layout for Mari is going to be very different from a UDIM layout in Painter. The reason is that in Mari, you can very quickly copy paste one texture from one UDIM to another UDIM. Very nice and simple like that. But in Painter, you can't really do that. But in Painter, you have a Asymmetry tool, so you don't really have to do that. So yeah, the layout is just quite different. It's very dependent on your workflow, to be honest. So you also in Mari, one of the reasons you want to lay things out in a specific manner is because you can select different UDIMs. Like you don't really have selection tools in Painter, which is really annoying, right? So in Mari, you can select the UDIM, you can hide the UDIM. So you can use UDIMs as essentially selection sets, which significantly speeds up your work. It's a really, really good way of working. I can't really do it in Painter, but in Painter, the way you're setting up your texture sets is also based on materials, and how you're defining materials could also be dependent on UVs as well. So it's a bit of a broader question than just how do you work with UVs or UDIMs effectively and UVs effectively. Really try a few different layouts, experiment with this in Painter, experiment with this in Mari, or if you don't use Mari, who cares then? You don't have to make a Mari layout if you're not using Mari. Essentially, UV mapping is really the first step of texturing. A good UV map, good layout is going to significantly speed up texturing, and a crappy one is going to significantly slow it down. So just by texturing a lot, you're going to eventually learn it. It's not like when I was learning UV mapping or UDIM, the UDIM layout, it wasn't like I was sat down and with a bunch of people and be like, all right, this is how you do it, Henning. Now you have to learn it. I just kind of texture a lot, and then you just kind of pick it up that way. Also, different people have different preferences because, people are different. People have different ways of texturing. So if you have different ways of texturing, then you might have different requirements for the layout as well. What's the best software for baking currently? I don't really know, to be honest, because there are a lot of good ones. Seems like people are generally using Painter or Marmoset. Those seems to be fairly good at that. I know some people are using Knold as well, KNALD, Knold. But yeah, I mean, seems like those are fairly solid at that. You can also bake in Mari now, so that's cool, but it's still in its infancy. So they added the bakery in version 7, which I cover in Intro to Mari. But Painter and Marmoset seems to be perfectly good at that. Wonder if people still use XNormal. I haven't used that in years. At least those two are going to do a hell of a job at that. Are you or anyone here planning on going to the Trojan Horse Unicorn in Portugal? Man, would love to. Sounds like a lot of fun, but no. It's one of those, like, I've spent a lot of my time and a lot of my time just thinking about 3D, and a lot of my time with 3D artists. For my vacations, I kind of want to not think about 3D, to be honest. Portugal is such a beautiful country, and if I was going to Portugal, I would not be thinking about doing 3D. I would be maybe exploring the beautiful culture, or maybe just relaxing, right? I would like to improve my texturing and I want to learn Mari, but just using non-commercial Mari for learning purposes. It includes 6 UDIMs and 4 UDIMs, 4 texture max, or 4K max. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mari non-commercial is fantastic. There is a reason they have it there, and it's legitimately solid. The restrictions there aren't even that severe, because 6 UDIMs is honestly quite a lot for Shrek here. This is 2. Right, this is just 2 UDIMs, and I think this is 4K. So I'm well within the restrictions. Let's check out the UV layout for this guy here. Right, just simple stuff, not even optimized, right? Because the topology is also zero meshed, so don't tell anyone, because I'll go straight to CG jail. I mean, check out this topology. Nice. So yeah, it whatever works right for this. But Mari non-commercial is phenomenal. It's really, really, really nice. Do you prefer using node workflow instead of layers? Mari nodes freak me out. Yeah, I think I made a tutorial on this, didn't I, on YouTube not too long ago, on how to use Mari. Yeah, pretty sure I did. I keep forgetting that I made this tutorial. But yeah, here we go. This is nobody really watched this one, but here is a YouTube video for this one. This covers how to use, this is a free guide on how to use Mari. It's like an hour long. It's not really like a companion to the full course. It's just a full standalone guide like we had for some of the other ones. Mari nodes aren't really uniquely good or bad. Mari nodes are fairly comparable to nodes in other software, to be honest, like Fusion or Nuke, Blender, Maya, Houdini. Like they're all nodes are kind of nodes, right? But it's more the nodal workflow that can be a bit intimidating. I find that doing simple things is much, much easier with layers in something like Painter. But the moment you're doing anything with any kind of complexity, it's so much nicer to texture with nodes, because you can reuse things in a completely different way. Let's say you have like a node graph, right? And you have over here, you have tons of masks. So you have masks for like the eye, the ear, all that kind of stuff. So you have tons of different nodes here. So what you can do, you can just paint these masks here. And then over here, you have your color map. And in here, you have a node here and you have a node here. Maybe it's a grading node or something. You need to do that. Now you can just kind of teleport this over here and in here. So you can just use this directly. So this just plugs in directly. There's no connection between them. It's just a teleport. Fantastic. Then over here, you have your roughness, and then you can just plug this also directly in here. Just plug these things directly in here, and you can layer them up, or connect them up, right, through merge nodes. So everything just kind of goes in here, and it's such a powerful workflow. So in terms of just reusing, it's really, really, really handy. But it's also for complex scenes, layers are just not very good, I think, because it gets very difficult to organize them, because it's just a vertical stack, right? It just goes up and down. So it gets a bit hard to actually organize it. While with nodes, it can be difficult to get an overview if it's done in a messy way. But if you have if you organize your scenes in a clean manner using nodes, you can create some very, very nice scenes. But it's also just things that you can't do with layers. So for high-end texturing, I really, really, really do recommend using Mari. But also depends what you're doing, right? Because, for instance, the smart material system in Painter is miles ahead of the smart material system in Mari. They have something, like they have a material system, but it's just not as good. The material system in Mari or Painter is just much, much, much nicer. But one of the biggest benefits of Mari for me isn't even the node system. You know, node system is good, but it's pros and cons, right? But one of the biggest benefits is the warping tools, because in Painter you can't really warp things. You have the warp project, but that's a very different thing. You can take up an image in Mari, warp it, project it onto the textures, and you can do this with all sorts of stuff. So you can do this with like the displacement, with the bump, with roughness, with color. So you can genuinely get something that looks very refined using images. Using images for projection in Painter kind of sucks, just because you generally don't have these warping tools. But you know, pros and cons. Both are really awesome software. But in Mari, I'm annoyed by how complicated certain things are, but I have a lot of power. While in Painter, I'm always annoyed by how I can't do simple things like, oh, my UV's changed or my topology changed. I want to transfer that to a new map or to new mesh and such, or like even things like selecting parts of the model and hiding it. I can't really do that. So they were like, oh, but you can just paint opacity masks. Not the same thing though. Not the same thing. So pros and cons. I heard Mari is preferred when texturing creatures. Do you agree? Yeah, I agree. The reason is twofold. It's first off, performance is much, much better. If you're dealing with creatures, you often need like 100 UDIM plus. It's just, you just need a lot more resolution than you do if you're texturing a lot of hard surface stuff. A lot of hard surface is like, that, of course it can get heavy, right? It absolutely can get heavy, but for characters, you often just need a lot more. But also for... that's just per performance, right? But also just the warping tools, like I said, in terms of images, it just deals better with images. And a lot of times you're dealing with characters or creatures, you just need to rely more on that. You need to rely more on images because it's more specific. If you're doing wood or stone or something, oftentimes it kind of just has to feel like wood or stone, but it doesn't have to be exactly what it is you're looking at. But for characters, often you have to be extremely specific with what you're doing. So you really need a lot of control. But, you know, it depends on the person as well. There is no... one is not objectively better than the others. That's why it's a good idea to have both. But also depends... man, there's so many things that it depends on. But... man, it sucks to learn so many different software. So if you're already a proficient Painter user and Painter does everything you need to, learning Mari is probably not necessary. At the same time, if you're a Painter or Mari user and does everything you need to, Painter might not be needed. That's one of the things that is both kind of awesome and really annoying being a CG artist. It's awesome because you get to learn tons of software, right? Because every single software is adding something new to Arsenal. So suddenly you can do a whole new thing. But at the same time, learning new software is just time consuming. It takes a long time. If you want to learn Marvelous, you have to learn Marvelous. You have to get licenses for it. You have to update the licenses. You need to learn a whole new skill, which is becoming a tailor. It's just involved. You want to learn texturing, or cool, Mari, Painter, Substance Designer, or all these kind of things. It's just involved. How do you deal with high polycounts on detailed sculpts? I'm doing doing a realistic creature, and I am at the texturing stage. I'm finding my rig is struggling towards 50 million polys. Then I recommend splitting the character up into multiple tools, if that's even possible. Like really splitting the characters into multiple subtools, maybe even multiple scenes as well, multiple tools altogether, because that stuff can just get really heavy. But also a clever way to do it is, instead of like what I'm doing now, this is not clever at all because I'm sculpting all the pores and everything. A clever way to do this is to do this in texturing, because then you're not clogging up your computer, because 50 million polys is quite a lot for a character. So if you're doing this kind of stuff with like in texturing, you need a much lower poly count than this. But if you're doing this stuff in sculpting, you just need a really high poly count. Honestly, for this, the poly count is almost a bit too low. I wish I could do more, but then I'm at 60 million because, 18 times 4 is almost 60 million. So it's like 54 or something, whatever it is. So 56 maybe. So you just need a higher resolution sculpt for that. And it's not even like a hardware thing, because ZBrush just isn't meant to do these kind of insanely high poly sculpts, like not like the 200 million poly sculpts, right? So I highly recommend for that you do this in texturing or in look dev. What would you say to a potential student who wants to get into entertainment but sees tens of thousands of layoffs and studio closures on the news? I would say that right now we are in a bit of a special time, because it's a bit of a financial thing, right? Like we are essentially at the end of a market that's been going up for a very long time, basically since like 2009, 2010, and now the market goes up and down. It goes in waves. Sometimes it goes up and everyone's getting jobs, and sometimes it goes downwards. Now it's going downwards. At least that's my opinion on. And that means that, yeah, the market just goes in waves. So I would say if you're a potential student, then you probably haven't started studying yet. That might mean that you finish your studies in like 4 years, maybe 3 years. The world might be very different then. The financial market might be very different in the same way between like 2018 and 2021. It was very, very different. Or between 2021 and 2024, right? Very different. 2006 to 2009, very different markets. So on like a 3-4 year horizon, we generally don't know what's going to happen. Like it's completely unknown what's going to happen with the industry in this time frame. Like literally unknowable. If anyone says they know, they are overconfident or they're lying to you. You cannot know because you cannot predict the future. So we don't know where AI is going to be in that time. We don't know what the overall financial market is going to be at a time. Maybe it is the mother of all recession. So maybe at that point, the economy is bounced back nicely and everything is kind of chugging along and people are getting funding for companies and all that kind of stuff. One of the reasons that a lot of companies are shutting down and struggling is because debt got a lot more expensive. So debt is essentially how a lot of companies are surviving because they're getting investments, and investment comes a lot apart from debt. And debt just got super cheap. It was super cheap, then it got super expensive. So suddenly getting investments or getting further investments for your projects got really expensive. And that might change in the future, right? Or maybe just that people are really scared of the current financial market and they're afraid of giving investments or afraid of spending money on games or movies. So, but maybe in a few years, that's gonna pick back up. Literally unknowable with what's gonna happen there, but the market goes in waves. If you want to do CG, I would say go for it. It's no one knows what's gonna happen going forward. So it's not like let's say AI comes right and starts to become like a serious competitor or serious threat to jobs. Well, it's currently not, right? In terms of 3D, it's not a serious job taker. The serious job taker in the Western world has been outsourcing, right? That's a thing that's been genuinely taking a lot of jobs away from like the US, Canada, Europe. But AI really hasn't done that yet. But if it does become a serious thing, like which it might, then it's not like programming is safe or like doing accounting or legal work or anything is safe, because then who knows what's going to happen. So I would say just kind of follow your dream and go for that. And if everything goes completely tits up, then you reevaluate that. But yeah, I would just say that layoffs today does not mean that the market is going to be bad in 3-4 years. It might mean that the market is phenomenal in 3-4 years, since now you have a lot of people who are, obviously layoffs are terrible things, but maybe a lot of people are going to start their own little studio. And maybe at that point they're hiring. Maybe they got investments at that point. But it's impossible to tell. Feels like a blink and a new software shows up. Yep, that's true. It's so fun but so annoying as well, because now suddenly you have to learn a whole new thing. All right, that is $300 a year in subscription fees, and need to just stay up to date on that, and staying up to date on all the other things. Luckily, Maya isn't really updating anymore, so kind of is, but not really. So at least there's not a whole lot to stay up to date on there. Blender, on the other hand, Blender is updating all the time, which is fun, but also suddenly the thing you thought you knew, it doesn't work anymore, and you have to keep watching tutorials for stuff. So double-edged sword, isn't it? Particularly if you're making tutorials as well, I have to stay up to date on a lot of things. And particularly if you're doing something like you make tutorials of Blender, you'd have to redo the tutorials because they might not be up to date in a few years. All right, cool. So this guy here has got a bit of an improvement in in quality over the stream now. He's just a lot sharper, a lot nicer. So yeah, I'm liking where he's going. Do you ever change the alpha on the damn standard? Nope. I've tried. You know how I use this brush here, which is awesome, like the clay brush I have here. I really like this one. I've been trying to find a better way for... I'm trying to make my own version of the damn standard, and I can't because the damn standard is just so good. So yeah, if I could, I would have, because I always like to improve things like that. But man, the damn standard is just solid. That's also how you kind of know that I believe in the brush I made, because I genuinely use it, and I don't use my custom. don't use my custom damn standard, which means my custom damn standard isn't very good. Changed the damn standard alpha? Blasphemy. Yep. I mean, I changed the clay buildup alpha. Not just changed, I replaced the brush entirely. You can still find it in ZBrush, but yeah, I replaced it completely. So I'll guess I will be doing some blasphemy there as well. I regret not buying ZBrush before it became subscription based. Yeah, it's an annoying one, but also at the same time, at some point everyone will basically have to subscribe, because I mean, just like take a longer time horizon if you want to keep doing ZBrush. If you're going to be using ZBrush in like 2029 and you're in 2022, you won't be able to open any files because it's not backwards compatible. So everyone's going to have to export OBJs, which is not possible because, you know, they don't have layers or anything like that. And there might be new features that everyone's using and you're just left behind. So, man, everyone's going to have to upgrade eventually. Particularly the backwards compatibility is very annoying. One thing is, if there was to be anything fancy in it, there was a whole new layering system or a whole new group system or something that was genuinely incompatible. But it's not. It's not incompatible at all. Like this is the same thing. You can have had this for years, right? It just genuinely is like the files always just break compatibility, no exceptions. New version, no compatibility with the last one. I'm actually not sure why that is. Like if it's a purely technical thing or if it's a deliberate thing. The reason for it being a deliberate thing would be a bit weird, considering that it's always been like this in ZBrush, and the updates were always free until Maxim bought it. So I never really understood it, because if everyone is up getting the latest version anyway, why are you forcing people onto that version? So I have no idea. Who knows how ZBrush works under the hood? What does a creature artist do for games? Because I don't have UDIMs. So what is their solution to remain the quality? I have no idea. I've never worked in games. But right, I think that is it for today. I have been sculpting this character for a long time now today, so I think we're covering a lot of different things as well, like rendering and sculpting and all that kind of stuff. So a bunch of fun stuff. I'm just going to save this out, and I'll take like maybe one more question. I'm probably going to be back one of the later days as well. Hopefully we're going to see some more Morten streaming as well. He was live yesterday, well, that was nice, but maybe he's live tomorrow. Who knows, who knows. Just saving this guy out. UDIM's a new thing. I feel I've never heard of it. UDIM's have been around for at least a decade. I used UDIM's for the first time in 2012, 2013, something like that. No, they've been around for a very long time. They were basically introduced with Mari, because Mari was built as a film tool. I think it was for Avatar, like the first one. And they just needed to paint a significant amount of resolution. So they needed just UDIMs. They basically had to create that. But yeah, that's it then for, thank you so much for watching the stream. It was really fun today. Thanks for really good questions, and yeah, see you guys in the future.